Hope everybody can hear me. By the sounds of it, you can. So I can see that not everybody has come in, and people are going to be joining us as we speak, which is fine. We will start. Yesterday we began IELTS speaking. We had a look at the criteria which will be used to mark us. And are you able to remember the 4 criteria which will be used to give you your final IELTS speaking band score? Let's see if we can put the answers into the chat. The 4 criteria is what we are looking for, that IELTS will be using to give us our final speaking band score. So Dina, Azamat have told us it's fluency and coherence. Sultan is telling us lexical resource. And there's one more. Grammar, range and accuracy. Thank you, Sultan and Aidana. So yeah, the 4 of them are fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammar, range and accuracy, and pronunciation. All 4 equally weighted, all 4 just as important as the other. Yesterday we also had a look at 3 candidates which we'll be studying today. Do you remember where the candidates are from? Which countries are the candidates that we looked at yesterday from? We can all remember the girl from Turkey, there's another girl from Syria, and another girl from South Korea. Great. Great to see that you were able to retain quite a lot of information. That is really encouraging. So today we're going to have a look at speaking part 1. Yesterday we had a look at the introduction frame. And the introduction frame, as we found out, should last approximately 20 seconds. It can last longer if you're unprepared, if your passport is in a pocket that you've forgotten about. However, if it's on the table in front of you and you can give it to the examiner straight away, it shouldn't take more than 20 seconds. Straight after that frame 0 finishes, we move into the first frame, which is part 1. And in part 1, the examiner will ask you questions. It's in the form of an interview. So it's quite relaxed, hopefully, for you. If you're not feeling too nervous, hopefully you can have a big smile on your face like that girl in the photo. And hopefully the examiner will have a nice big smile for you. And they'll be asking you very familiar topics. So as we mentioned yesterday, we start off very easy and then it gets more and more complex towards the end of the test. So the questions will be, the first questions straight after that introduction frame will be either about your hometown or about what you do. So you got 2 possible frames, which could be chosen by the examiner. After this, you'll be asked 2 more sets of questions, and they will be on 2 sets of topics, and very easy topics such as family, hobbies, food preferences, and all of these questions are all about yourself. So you're answering about yourself, maybe about your country, but they're very simple questions. So even though they are simple questions, sometimes candidates still don't really know how to answer them. They feel slightly intimidated by those questions, and feel that they are at loss for words as to how to answer these quite simple questions. Again, you guys have come and taken a seminar. You'll be exposed to some of these questions. What you can do is you can go home, you can practice answering some of these quite easy questions, so that when you do take the IELTS test, you do feel familiar with those questions and you won't get put off by any of those questions. So let's have a look at a strategy for part one. Now, part one, even though it is quite simple, there are some things that you should still do. One of those things is that you should listen carefully to the question. There's no problem in asking the examiner to repeat the question if you didn't understand it. The worst thing that you can do is try to answer a question that you didn't understand and answer it wrong. I mean, that's definitely going to affect your vocabulary. So don't try and guess the answers. That is not going to work well for you, and it will hinder communication. As we were looking yesterday at the criteria, one of the things that we really did point out was critical is that we be able to make ourselves understood. And this is important the most important thing is that you understand the question if you want to give a right answer. In part one, we don't want long sentences. We don't want sentences which just go on and on and on and on and on, and there's no need for that. The sentences, the answer should be no more than 2 to 3 sentences. Remember, the examiner wants to ask you 3 sets of questions, and in order for him to be able to do that, you do need to give 20 to 30 second answers. Sometimes if in the test the examiner stops you and pushes you along, it's because you're just taking too long. So we need short and to the point 2 to 3 sentence answers. And if you're thinking about how much is that in terms of time, that's going to be around 20 to 30 seconds per answer in part one. So that's what you want to be limiting your answers to. The examiner will often ask the question, why? Mainly to participants who don't give full answers. So when participants are only giving a 1 word or a 1 sentence answer that's not fully developed, the examiner will then come in and say why, just to get some more language out from you. Remember, it is a speaking test. You do need to speak. So on one hand, there are candidates who try to speak too much. And in an interview, if you imagine yourself going for a job with a company, and you get asked a question, and the interview is meant to last 30 minutes, you can't go on about that question for 10 minutes. Obviously, the people who are interviewing you want to find out as much information as they can, and they don't want you to focus on just one question. They want to ask a range of different questions. And it's the same in the IELTS interview. There's only 4 to 5 minutes in the first frame. We've already lost 20 seconds to check the passport. And now we're trying to talk about 3 different topics. And there does need to be a certain amount of speed in how you answer those questions. On the other hand, giving really short and answers which aren't concrete, that's not going to show your level. So one of the ways to really check, are you answering the questions fully, is have you answered the question why? Remember, there aren't any right or wrong answers, and if the truthful answer isn't interesting, or you think that the truthful answer might not be something that you can talk for a long time about, you can always change. Do you like the city you live in? And if you can't think of any reasons why you like it, why not say you don't like it and compare it to another city? My city, Taldyqurghan, is quite a boring city, especially if you compare it to Almaty. We don't have a lot of interesting places to go out to, and generally the options for eating out are quite limited. Whereas in a place like Almaty, you've got a lot of places to visit. You've got a lot of streets dedicated solely to eating out. And so it's obviously going to be a much more interesting place to live. Perfectly correct answer. Answers the question. Well, maybe not focusing too much on Taldyqurghan. We've moved on and talked about another city because obviously that gives us more to talk about. So it is up to you how you answer the question. There's no right way to answer the question. There's no wrong way to answer the question except for going off topic. So in part one, another really important thing is to pay attention to the tense. Sometimes in a set of questions, there'll be a change in the tense. So there might be a simple question at the beginning. Do you like present simple? But that might change to maybe a perfect tense at the end. And so do pay attention to the tense of the question. At the end, don't stress. This is part one. It's the easiest part of the test. And the reason part one is made easy is to help you also adjust, to pick up a temp, to relax before the test starts to get a little bit more complicated and starts to really expose some of the greater mistakes, or maybe some of the need for greater vocabulary and greater thought and greater process. So it's really this part of the test which is made to help you adjust to the test. So don't make it complicated for yourself. Lastly, most importantly, know what to expect. When you know what to expect, you can be prepared and you can know what the examiner is doing, and you can follow from there. Okay, so as we mentioned, part one, the first frame, straight after you've had your ID checked, you're going to get a question about where you live or what you do. So obviously where you live can have several different, there's several different ways of looking at where you live. Where do you live? You can give your street address. Where do you live could mean your city, could mean your country, your village. Alternatively, we could be talking about your house. What do you live in a house, or do you live in an apartment? How big is your house? What room is your favorite, etc. What you do will really depend on yourself. So it could be your profession. I'm an entertainer, or I'm a policeman, I'm a pilot, or it could be that you're a student. So you will talk about your studies. Some people don't work and don't study. That can lead to some complications. If you're in a gap year, or if you've just finished high school, it's perfectly fine to say you're a student. If you're planning to study, you can say I'm a student who's in a gap year at the moment. And when the examiner asks you, what do you study, which is a present simple question, you could answer it in the past. I was studying my year 12 A levels. I'm now looking to study at a university, and the subject that I'm interested in studying is accounting. But do bear in mind that the examiner is going to try and put you into one of those two categories, either a worker or somebody who is studying. If you're a student who works a part-time job, just choose one. Either choose well, basically you should choose the one that your main occupation. So if you're in university studying a bachelor degree and 2 times a week you do some work, great, but talk about your studies. It'll be easier for you. You'll have more to talk about. So when we talk about where we live, it could well be a question about a city, a town, or a village. Now, some of this vocabulary is very vague. The difference between a town and a city, sometimes those differences vary according to the different places you live. So what can be considered a town, for example, in England, would be considered a village in China. And what would be considered maybe a city in different places could well be considered a town in other places. So it is a matter of perspective. But basically what we're talking about, when we're talking about a city, we're talking about a big place with maybe around 1 million people. However, a lot of cities can be quite small. For example, Cardiff is quite a small city. A town could be considered a city. It could be considered a synonym of city, and in some IELTS questions, it is considered a synonym of a city. The main thing to have a look at here is that a village is something that's quite considerably smaller than both a town or a city. So if you come from Almaty, that could be considered a town, as could Taldykorgan. Alternatively, they could both be considered cities. So let's talk about your hometown or village. And as you can see in this IELTS question, you've only got 2 choices. You've got hometown, which is a place which is probably referring to something like a city, either a city or a town, or the place where you come from. It could even include very small towns, such as Hramtau. Village, obviously, in case you don't have a hometown, you live somewhere out in the sticks, in the steppe somewhere. We've also included you into this question. What kind of place is it? So here we've got an option to give a 20-second answer. What kind of place is Cardiff? Cardiff is a great place to live in. It's very, it's not big for a city. However, it does have a lot of parks and it has a lot of historic places, which makes it very interesting. For example, there's a castle right in the center of town. What's the most interesting part of your town? And the most interesting part of Cardiff, in my opinion, would be the barrage, which leads on into Cardiff Bay. I find this place really beautiful because it's on the water. On the left, you've got the bay, and on the right, you've got the Bristol Channel. When the weather is nice and the lighting is good, you can take magnificent photographs there. What kind of jobs do people in your town do? I'm not really sure what kind of jobs most people do in Cardiff. I've never looked at any kind of survey or data which would give me concrete information. I am aware, however, that there are several universities which are located actually in the main part of the city. So I'm guessing that a lot of people work in those universities. Would you say it's a good place to live? I think that if you have a family, then Cardiff would be a great place for you to settle. However, if you're young, if you're maybe a little bit more ambitious and you like the busy city life, then Cardiff could actually be a little bit boring for you, and a city like London would be far more interesting. So as you can see, 20 to 30-second answers. There's a whole lot of things that you can say about your city. However, for some reason, when candidates are asked these questions, let's talk about your hometown. What kind of place is it? And they're like, it's a city. I mean, come on. Be prepared. Know what to expect. And hopefully you can give some good answers. Now, so we've talked about where you live in terms of a city. There's another way that this question could also be posed, and that would be where you live in terms of your accommodation. Now, we've got 4 pictures here. If you have a look at picture number 1, what do you see right up the top there in the corner? What would that place be called in terms of accommodation? Somebody said a mansion. We've got a house. House would be the right way. Would be the right way to define the building in the top left corner. That is a house. I'm not really sure how to make that clear, but let's move on into the second building, which is on the right, on the top. We've got apartment. Yeah, so when we talk about this building as a whole, it's a block of flats, as Nara said. We've got a block of flats, and so I live in a block of flats, in an apartment, in a flat. They're all kind of synonyms, really. And so we've got, basically, it's not a house. In Kazakhstan, that would translate into house. In English, that is not a house. A house is what is on the left. This is a house. This is a block of flats. And I live in a block of flats. I live in an apartment on the 4th floor. I live in an apartment on the 10th floor. Moving down, we've got this kind of a dormitory. Thank you, Altenbeck. So yeah, a lot of students live in dorms. So do you live in a house or an apartment? Well, I actually don't live in either a house or an apartment. I live in a dormitory. So that's fine to say. Just make sure that you know that word. Danielle reckons it's a jail. Some of the dormitories in that I have seen are very akin to jails, very similar to jails, and probably some jails in the Western countries would be more pleasant to live in than some dormitories. My wife, when she studied in Yas, she said the dormitory there was horrid. And she lived there for 1 year, and that was all she could manage. After that, she was ready to go to any other place. Finally, we've got one more little place here. What is this called? The last picture that we haven't looked at yet. And Arozan has said it's a cottage. I mean, it could possibly be, as Nara said, a country house or a village house, but it is a cottage. And this is where there's a little bit of a difference between what is considered a cottage in Kazakhstan and what is considered a cottage in English. So many people were saying that this 2-story house up the top here would be considered a cottage. And it would be, if you're in Kazakhstan, people would say a very similar word, cottage, but with Russian pronunciation. However, that doesn't translate into a cottage in English. So if you come from a nice big house like this in Kazakhstan and you say you live in a cottage, people will think you live in something like this. Again, we've lost communication, which is a main thing when we're speaking a foreign language. So do bear that in mind. That is a very common mistake when you see people who come from quite affluent backgrounds saying that they live in cottages, and you think, I'm sure you're using the wrong word there. Okay. So let's talk about accommodation, and tell me about the kind of accommodation that you live in. Here would be a perfect opportunity to describe your house. I live in a house. I live in an apartment block. I live in a terraced house. Whatever it is that you live in, you can describe that. How long have you lived there? If you have a look at this question here, how long have you lived there? Again, that question there does have a different tense than the first question. So this is what I was talking about before. Pay attention to the tense of the question. And the correct way to answer that would obviously be, I have lived there for or since, using the present perfect. What do you like about living there? Again, you don't have to give a lot of information. You just have to give just 1 or 2 ideas. Remember, 20 to 30 seconds, 2 to 3 sentences. And what sort of accommodation would you most like to live in? So these beautiful pics that I've thrown up here, that's not where I live. There are no places like that in the UK. At least not with that sort of sky. UK houses are very traditional and old. If you want a nice modern house like this, you have to go to the US or to Australia. Okay, so we've talked about accommodation, and obviously there are 2 different ways that question could be tackled. It could be tackled in the form of your city, or it could be looked at in the form of your actual place. Let's look at now what you do. So now let's talk about what you do. Do you work, or are you a student? And if you answer, I'm a student, you might get asked questions such as, what subjects do you study? This is a little bit of a tricky question for some people, especially year 12 students. Do we have any year 11 or 12 students with us today? Give us a shout if you're a year 11 or a year 12 student. So we've got some 10th grade students, some NIS school students. Great. And so obviously you study a whole range of subjects, maybe up to 10 subjects during the week. So what subjects do you study? Well, and you start listing them, and what will happen, it will affect your fluency. I study maths, English, science, and obviously you're giving unnecessary pauses right there as you think about all the subjects that you study. Just pick out one or two subjects which you really like, and you can even say then, what subjects do you study? I study a range of subjects. Obviously being a school student, however, the subjects which I am really focusing on are maths and physics. They're my favorite subjects. I really enjoy them and hope to do something with them in the future. Obviously, if you study at university, it's going to be a lot more easy for you. All you have to say is, I'm a medical student. Yeah, I've been studying. And again, what subject do you study? I'm a medical student. It's not enough. Give some extra information to make that 20 seconds. I'm a medical student. I study at the so-and-so medical university. I really enjoy my studies there. What do you enjoy most about your studies? So choose one or two different things that you really like. It could be something about your school. It could be something about your friends. The possibilities are endless. Don't feel that these questions are putting you in a corner. Don't feel that you have to answer something specifically. If you are working and you want to say you're a student, by all means, you can say false facts. However, the easiest thing to do is to tell the truth. So when you do tell the truth, you obviously have less to think about. What do you enjoy most about your studies? I don't enjoy my studies. I can't wait to finish school and to study something that is going to be really meaningful for me. I find the subject at school quite boring, and I feel that a lot of the subjects that I'm studying have no use for my future life. So there you go, a truthful answer, but one that doesn't necessarily talk about enjoying studies. So these are all possibilities, things that different ways that you can answer these questions. What do you plan to do when you finish your studies? Study more, of course, especially if you're a high school student. So what do you plan to do when you finish your studies? I'm really hoping to enter into a good university, a university where I'll be able to, etc., etc. So it's up to you how you answer these questions, but do understand that the opportunities to do so, they are endless. And obviously there's a great little question here: which is more important to you, your teachers or the other people you study with? And again, it's really up to you how you answer this. You could say, oh, I feel both the teachers and the people I study with are both very important to me, and give a reason, 2 or 3 sentences on that. Let's have a look at our Korean friend. The examiner has already checked her ID, and now she's going to ask her about what she does.
Let's talk about what you do. Do you work or are you a student?
I work.
What's your job?
I'm an office worker.
Why did you choose that kind of work?
I thought I am good at organizing things, and I'm an organized person, so I thought I would deserve to work in the office environment.
What do you enjoy about your job?
That's a very good question. It's quite nice to coordinate among people. It's nice to work with lots of different people from lots of departments. So I like socializing with the people, and also when it's related to work, I can also help them at the same time as while I'm socializing with them.
So you can see that she started off a little bit nervous, and you can't blame her. She's been video recorded for the purpose of education. Examiners will be watching her, assessing her language skills. So obviously she's going to be feeling quite nervous. She did answer the questions quite well. She's giving 20 to 30 second answers. She's giving enough detail. The examiner didn't have to ask why. However, I just want to draw attention to one little thing that she did do. The examiner asked her, why do you like this job? And she said, that's a very good question. It's not really a very good question when you think about it. Why do you like your job? It's a very simple question. And obviously, she's feeling nervous, but think about some of these, what we can, we use these little fillers, and sometimes education centres teach these fillers. And when you don't know what to say, you say, that's a very good question. And then you, as you think about your answer. However, sometimes this just doesn't work. Like in her case here. And another filler that people often use is, in my opinion. Well, if you've been asked your opinion, there's no real reason to say, in my opinion. Do you like the people that you work with? Well, in my opinion, I think the people, it's a question directed to you. So it's specifically all about you. So there's using a filler such as, in my opinion, is actually quite distracting. And it will be quite annoying to anybody who's listening to you when you continually use these type of fillers. So do pay attention to those fillers. So after being asked about after being asked either about where you live or what you do, you'll get asked about a variety of topics. Hopefully you'll be asked about 2 more topics. Some people that talk on and on and on actually only get asked about 1 topic, but you should get asked about 2 more topics, and that could be from a wide variety of various topics in that book. So let's listen to our friend from Syria as she gets asked 4 questions about again, a general topic, and let's see how she manages to answer them.
Let's talk about music. What sort of music do you usually enjoy listening to?
Well, I like music very much because I'm a singer myself. I like to sing, so I have a great taste of music. I like the classical, I like the Arabic music. And so music is very important. I have to listen to music all the day.
Has the kind of music you like changed over the years?
Well, yes, it changed because I used to listen to the almost it's slow music, and nowadays it's just in the very fast, and sometimes techno, and I don't like this kind of music. I still listen to the music that I liked, and I still have the same CDs, and all the time I listen. I sometimes listen to this music, the new music, but I don't like it. I just like to listen to the music that I liked when I was a child.
Do you prefer listening to live music or recorded music?
Well, recorded. I don't like live music because I feel always the singer is not good in live music, so I feel that recorded is better.
Do you think listening to music helps you study?
Yes, I always listen to music when I'm studying. Sometimes my friends make fun of me because I'm not concentrating, but actually it makes me more concentrated.
Thank you.
So we could see that she actually answered the questions quite well. She managed to keep going with around 20 to 30 seconds per answer. Her first answer was, she did kind of repeat herself. She wasn't very clear in what she was trying to say when she was talking about the techno music. And the question was actually very, very simple. Has the kind of music you like changed over the years? And all you have to say is basically, have you been listening to the same music all your life, or has there been any changes? She started to talk about the different trend, and she repeated herself again, saying that she likes the quieter music, and then talking about how she sometimes listens to the techno music. And kind of a little bit confused herself as well as all of us in us trying to understand what she was actually trying to say. So these questions are very easy. Meloman, let's just hit that on the head. I'm a meloman, or something of that sort. It doesn't exist in English language. There's no such word, and I've heard it multiple times, not multiple times, I would say thousands of times in IELTS interviews from Kazakhstan, and I'm not exactly sure how that word kind of gets pushed into the English language. It doesn't exist in the English language. What sort of music do you like? Do you enjoy listening to? I enjoy listening to a wide variety of music. It doesn't really matter what you say there. I enjoy listening to rock, as long as you then expand on why you enjoy listening to that type of music. Again, she answered the last two questions quite well. Gave 20 to 30 seconds, and they're a lot more clearer and a lot more developed. And really, that's what we should be concentrating on doing, is developing some of these answers so that we can have that coherence. Let's have a look at our our Turkish friend. She's a little bit lower in terms of she's a bit lower as a candidate than the other two girls, and she does struggle a little bit. However, she still manages to keep going. And I think that's the thing that we really got to learn from our Turkish friend here, is her ability to be able to keep on going.
Now let's talk about weekends. What do you usually do at the weekend?
At the moment, my weekends are very busy because I do a lot of housework, and I have a 2.5 years daughter. She's a very exciting and energetic child, and she mess up everywhere very quickly. It's not easy to tidy up and do it well.
What do you think you'll do next weekend?
I planned something for last week, but I couldn't do it. I'd like to bring my husband to the cinema. And after cinema, maybe we'll go to the Turkish restaurant in Santais.
Do you enjoy your weekends now more than you did when you were a child?
No, I prefer to be a child again, because when you are a child, you just play and you haven't got any responsibility or job to do. But now it's so different and difficult.
How important is it for you to relax at the end of the week?
It's very important, but at the moment it's not possible because now I'm studying English as well. Is when you start a job or study, you would like to be fresh, but it's really difficult to be.
So you can see that even though she's got quite a lot of limitations in her speech, she made some really basic errors. Even despite all of that, she's able to be sound very coherent, and we're able to understand everything that she's trying to put across. In actual fact, she's a lot more coherent than some of the other two girls in one regard, because she's able to answer these questions in a very simple but yet developed way. And I think that's something that we're looking for in part one. We're looking for developed responses, responses that don't go all over the place and get caught in little spider webs and it gets all messy and sticky. But we want to take an idea and run with that. Okay. I think due to the time limit, we're just going to skip through some of this. Obviously, you can talk about clothes. Some of these could be about advertising. Could talk about colours. The part one topics really are endless. What is a good idea is to get a whole lot of these part one topics and just practice answering them. 20 to 30 seconds. Developing one single idea. Unfortunately, we are limited to time, so let's go ahead and look at part two. Part two is your long term. You're the star. You're going to be speaking. The examiner's not going to be saying anything. He's just going to be listening, relaxing. Well, he's not going to be relaxing. He's going to be listening intently on how you speak. So you get a topic card with a topic, and you have 1 minute to prepare, and then you have to speak without stopping for 2 minutes. And that's really the important thing, because even the task is quite misleading. It says you can talk to 1 to 2 minutes. However, if you talk for 1 minute, the examiner won't stop you. He will ask you to keep on going. And really what it should be is you should be asked to talk for 2 minutes, because that's what's actually required from you. Let's have a look at one of the critical parts of the part two, and that is planning. You must plan if you want to be successful in the part two. If you don't plan, and some people don't plan and they still manage to get some kind of success. Obviously, they've practiced these tasks. However, planning is what will help you to move along and will stop you from forgetting what you were meant to say. So let's have a look at a little video on planning.
Making notes. When you are given the topic card, there are 6 stages you need to consider. First, you need to be clear on the topic of the card. In this example, you are being asked to describe a toy. Next, you should consider which is the most appropriate tense. In this example, you would mostly use past tenses. Now you would use the pencil and paper you were given to start making your notes. As there are 4 prompts on the topic card, it helps to divide the notepaper into 4 pieces. You can then make short notes for each prompt. In this example, the candidate has to talk about what the toy was, so has decided to describe a train. In the second prompt, the candidate has to talk about who gave it to them. In the third prompt, the candidate has to talk about where the toy is now, so has noted that he has no idea. For the final prompt, the candidate has noted that the toy was important because it helped him use his imagination. Having made basic notes from the topic card, you should now spend the rest of your preparation time adding additional information. In this example, the candidate has added the following points. However, it is important that you only make notes. Remember, they are only there to help you speak. You should not be reading a speech that you have written.
Yeah, I've seen some very interesting things on the note papers over the years. It is interesting. One person actually drew a picture of the examiner in the 1 minute preparation time. He was an art teacher. She was forced to take the test, and she didn't have any English. And during the 1 minute, she managed to put together a sketch of the examiner. But really, what we should be doing is we should be writing ideas. So what we shouldn't be doing is we shouldn't be writing sentences. Don't write down your favorite idiom on the piece of paper. It's not going to help you. The amount of times I've seen linkers, idioms written down, I mean, this isn't going to help you. What you're trying to do is you're trying to write down ideas, and there should be a correlation between your box and, as the man described, between the points, and then further ideas to help you to move along. Okay, let's have a look at an example of a part 2, and this is the examiner will give the frame. So as the examiner starts to speak, this is what brings you into part 2. So when the part 1 questions have finished, the examiner will read out a script exactly as the lady is going to be reading out here. And that's what's going to draw you into part 2. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to how, I think it's our Korean friend who's going to be answering this question. Pay attention to how she answers the question and some of the difficulties that she has. Sorry, my apologies.
Now I'm going to give you a topic, and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and you can make some notes if you wish. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Here's some paper and a pencil for making notes.
Thanks.
And here's your topic. Please don't write anything on the booklet.
Okay.
I'd like you to describe a hobby you enjoyed when you were a child.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
Remember, you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
When I was a child, when I was very young, I didn't have much hobby because we used to we were quite encouraged to concentrate on only studying, not only, but yeah, pretty much studying. But once I got into university, I started to learn table tennis, bowling, and swimming quite late, but yeah, which I really enjoyed. So I used to regularly go to table tennis club, and I played with my colleagues, friends, and also I was in bowling club as well. So once a week I used to go to play bowling, things like that. And now I'd like to keep playing table tennis, especially, but it's quite difficult to keep my hobby at the time because of the busy environment with the children and with the family. But yes, definitely I would, once the children grow up, and I would start to play and be more active about the hobbies. Shall I continue, or
Can you tell me more about that?
what it involved? It involved like socializing things. So obviously, as I said, I was in a club, so I had to socialize with people, not just playing, the sports, table tennis, etc. We after playing the sports, we used to go out together and have a drink and have a nice chat, things like that.
Thank you. Did your friends have the same hobby as you?
Some of them had, and especially once I got a job, my colleagues, some of my colleagues had the same hobbies. So we used to have a club in my work, which everybody plays together with each other. So that was good.
Okay, thank you. Can I take the booklet
Sure.
and the paper and pencil back from you, please? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I guess our candidate here actually made one of the errors that I would really like you not to make in your test, which is she ran out of things to say. Again, why did she run out of things to say? Obviously, she hasn't practiced the task enough. It is quite a difficult task to speak for 2 minutes without stopping on any given topic. However, I have seen people who have mastered this. They're able to start at the time given and stop exactly at 2 minutes, saying thank you themselves before the examiner. So obviously they've practiced the task and they've done what is going to help them. They've maybe recorded themselves, maybe they've done it in front of a mirror, continuously over and over on a wide variety of topics until they've mastered the skill of being able to speak for 2 minutes without stopping. When the candidate did stop, she kind of looked at the examiner for help. The examiner can't really do anything. She just pointed back to the task and said, look, could you have a look at this question here and tell me something more about it. So yeah, overall, she did manage to keep on going, and when the examiner did prompt her, she was able to keep on to further give a little bit of information. Now, however, when you do your task to speaking, it is the most important thing to keep going. Remember, your fluency and coherence score is at stake here. If you do stop and start and think and go all over the place, it's definitely not going to help your overall performance. So when the test was finished, the examiner did ask a follow-up question. So we got some rounding off questions there at the bottom. So once the task has been asked. Basically, there are a few rounding off questions just to make sure that everybody's on task, has been listening, has been concentrating. Obviously, if you talk about something that's off topic, those rounding off questions won't apply, and there'll have to be something else given to you, such as a direct entry into a revised part 3. Anyhow, that's basically part 2 in a nutshell. I'm not sure if I can add anything more of value at this present time because we are a little bit limited by our time. So maybe what we'll do is we'll just jump into part 3, which is the discussion. So in part 3, the questions are going to be a lot more complex. And the reason they're going to be complex is because they're going to be about topics you might not necessarily be comfortable with speaking about. And further, they're going to be questions which are going to be rephrased by the examiner to suit you. And maybe something that you have talked about will then be further explored in more detail. And I mean, sometimes we really don't know much about these topics and we can find it quite difficult to continue speaking about them. So the topics will be linked to part 2. So whatever the topic card that you had, if you had to talk about a special gift or a present that you gave to somebody, then part 3 will be all about gifts. However, there'll be abstract questions. So this is really where we need to get our critical thinking skills working. Further, we need to be able to form arguments. Unfortunately, these 2 skills aren't well taught in many parts of the world and in many schools. I mean, if you go to if I took my school as an example, we weren't studying grammar in grade 6. So still in primary school, in grade 6 and 7, we were doing essay writing. We were learning how to form arguments, learning how to think critically, how to critically examine various news articles, etc. So from a young age, it was instilled in us to ask questions, to look at things not as a face, not based on their face value. However, a lot of education systems, such as the one in Kazakhstan, critical thinking is just something that isn't taught. Debating, it's not usually something that is widely looked at. And obviously then when you get into a part 3 where you do need to come up with ideas, people say the hardest part of writing task 2 of speaking part 3 is just coming up with ideas. I've got no ideas. I don't know where to get ideas from. Obviously it's a skill. I can't give you all of the ideas and you can't learn all the ideas, neither can you memorize all the ideas. But what you can do is learn a strategy to be able to develop these ideas. And basically, the strategy that you want to be developing here is the strategy of giving an argument. So in the same way that a paragraph has a very coherent structure to it, if it's well written, in the same way your spoken argument should have a very clear and well thought out argument in it, an argument that you're defending and trying to get across to the listener in a powerful and yet clear way. So let's have a look at our Korean friend, how she tackles some part 3 questions.
We've been talking about a hobby you enjoyed when you were a child, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, children's hobbies. In Korea, in South Korea, how do children spend their free time?
Playing with the children, playing with the friends, and they do learn lots of musical instruments, etc. So they do spend quite a lot of time to learn new things, to have a hobby. For example, learning how to play piano, flute, and at the moment, one of my nieces is learning how to ride on a horse, things like that. But also, of course, when they have free time, they just go out and play in the playground with their friends.
And you said they play musical instruments. Do they choose to do that kind of hobby?
Yeah, I mean, there would be probably parents would give them a few options, and so that they can choose what they would like. But yeah, there might be some of the parents' preferences as well.
Okay, so we can see that the examiner has given a bridge. The bridge has linked part 2 together with part 3. So we've been talking about a hobby that you enjoy doing. Now I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. And she said, let's consider first of all children's hobbies. Unfortunately, South Korean friend is quite nervous still, even at this part of the test. She's still not warmed up. Obviously, she does have some very good English. However, when she starts talking about children's hobbies, she really goes off on a tangent. She starts talking about a wide variety of things, hobbies, and I think this is one of the key things when asked about a topic that asks you to list a whole lot of items. Don't get caught up in giving a list. When you do give a list of things, you're not going to sound very coherent. So what are some of the hobbies that people here in England or that children here in England do? Well, reading. Another thing would be they like, some children have, they like riding bikes. Some children like arts and crafts. It doesn't sound coherent. It doesn't sound good. And because you're thinking and trying to get a list of things, nothing's been developed. So your sentence structures are going to be quite short. And it's not going to be anything exciting. So what would be better would be to take one hobby and develop it. So here in the UK, one of the hobbies that is really popular amongst children is a sport. So children choose a sport which they find interesting for themselves, and they'll go to a sports club or something of that sort to develop it. For example, here in Wales, one of the sports which is really popular is rugby. So parents will take their children to practice this hobby on Wednesdays for a practice session and on Saturdays for a game with other students. So that's probably one of the most popular hobbies here in the UK. And so what we've done is we've taken one hobby and we've really developed it. We've made it clear. We've given an example. And that there has also enabled us to use some more complex structures and a wider range of vocabulary than just listing a whole range of ideas. Even at the end, you can see in her answer, she hasn't quite managed to keep talking about hobbies. She started talking about going to the playground. Going to the playground isn't actually a hobby. And so the examiner has kind of brought her back on topic and said, and you said they play musical instruments. Do they choose to do that kind of hobby? And here what the examiner is doing, they're exploring a little bit further some of the ideas related to what the candidate has said. And they're prodding, trying to get a little bit more information, trying to prolong the discussion. Obviously in South Korea, I think the examiner has some knowledge about the Asian mentality in places like Korea, Japan, and China, where parents usually choose the hobbies for their children. And so she's kind of decided to prod and ask a few questions about that there. And obviously that's got a little bit more of a response from the candidate. Again, it was a little bit short in answering the prompt. She could have gone and developed that a whole lot more. I think we've come to the end of where we'll be able to get to today. So let's go and do our quiz, and we'll come back to where we left off. We'll come back to this tomorrow in our session, and in our next two sessions we'll also be looking at writing task 1 and writing task 2, and hopefully we'll be able to give some interesting information about that for you. Look, I'm sure you guys have a lot of comments, and we're going to have a question and answer session shortly. Keep your questions specifically about part 1 and 2, and we'll keep going with part 3 tomorrow. Try and get some of the more important details as well included in there. Okay, so we've got a quiz today. Alton, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So we've got 5 questions. Again, just to remind you, all the questions should be written in one line in order for them to be counted all together. And you must have all 5 questions correct to get the prize. I've made it a little bit simpler today. Hopefully we'll be able to get a prize for somebody. And the prize, if you all remember, is 5,000 tenge. So let's see if we can get a winner for our prize today. So our first question is, we've got a picture here, and I want to know what is the name of this place. And just to make sure that everybody can get it correct, it is a rock. So this place is a rock. Second question, in which country did table tennis or ping pong originate? So in which country was it invented? Ping pong or table tennis? Okay. Now, third question, how long does the test result, your IELTS test result, how long is it valid for after you've taken the exam? Fourth question, if you take the test again, your previous IELTS score will no longer be valid. Is that true or is that false? And lastly, if you disagree with the examiner, will you get a lower score? True or false? All right, let's go. Have we got a correct answer there, Alton? I think I saw some correct answers there.
So Birlik is the winner.
Okay, can you say his name again or her name?
Birlik. Birlik.
Okay, Yevlik.
Congratulations. He's my student, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, he studies SAT at our school.
I'm not sure if you should have said that. It sounds like corruption now, doesn't it?
No, just
Okay.
only smart students study at Bridge. This is the point here.
That's a point that you're making. Yes, all the smart students study at Bridge Academy with Alton.
Yeah, he's very smart, actually.
Yeah, so he nailed it. Well done.
Okay, Birlik. Congratulations. You should text me.
And you've just earned yourself 5,000 tenge. Well done. So yeah, the name of this rock is called Ayers Rock. However, there is a second name to it, and that's the Aboriginal name, which is called Uluru. Ping pong originated in England. Unfortunately, as many sports which originated in England, England is no longer the best at playing those sports. How long will your test result remain valid after taking the exam? The test result lasts for 2 years. After that, you have to retake it, unfortunately. However, there is some kind of logic to that. And the logic in that is that if you took the test and you really prepared for it and you peaked and you got your required score, after some time you might go back to using your language, and as any skill, it can get rusty. And so if you excelled at it 10 years ago, you might not excel at it anymore. So obviously there is a time limit. 2 years is, I guess, what they've decided to do. Whether it's good or not, it's nothing that we can do about it. It can get quite annoying, especially for people who change courses or go on to study a master's and then have to retake the IELTS. If you take the IELTS again and you get another score and that score better suits your purposes, well, that's great. If it doesn't, then you can use your first score. I think that's a question a lot of NIS students are interested in because they take IELTS on multiple occasions. And so if you took the test twice, you got a better score on your previous attempt, then you can always use your previous IELTS score. That's fine. If you disagree with the examiner, will you get a lower score? You won't. It's in actual fact, examiners enjoy when a candidate can give some counter arguments. It makes it all the more for a discussion. And if you feel that the examiner is kind of maybe, really pushing your ideas, that's only for the purpose of you producing richer vocabulary, richer structures as you engage in discussion. All right, well, let's go to the question and answers. And I think in our question and answers today, we really don't have a great deal of questions. We've only got one question here, Alton. So if you do have any questions, throw them into the question and answer chat box or whatever you would want to call that. Somebody, Nabi, has asked me, are you an examiner of writing? And I am. That makes up the majority of my work at present. I'm a writing examiner. Writing has changed. It used to be one system. Basically, what used to happen was all the writing scripts would be marked in Kazakhstan if they were done in Kazakhstan. Now they're scanned and sent to the UK and marked over there. The reason is for test security. Obviously, nobody can change the scores. The scores are put in from the examiner themselves, whereas before they were put in by other people. So yeah, it's all about test security for IELTS. It is a very secure test, and that's what makes it so popular amongst universities. Can we lie but answer correct? You can. Obviously, the examiner doesn't know you. They're probably not going to remember you after the test finishes, and that's fine. Say whatever you want. Obviously, don't get caught out lying, and that doesn't look good. What kind of practices could help to improve speaking? Like watching movies isn't exactly going to improve your speaking, though as any skill, getting a lot of the input skill is going to help you with your output. So what's really going to help you with your speaking is practice. Practicing the skills required for the specific questions. So part one requires an interview and answering interview questions. Part three requires forming arguments. Part two requires a monologue. Get your phone, record your answers, listen back to yourself. Yeah, it'll be, that would probably be the best advice that I could give you. Practice on those real IELTS questions. What if I don't know one particular word in the question in part two? So in part two, if you don't know a word, straight away ask the examiner, sorry, could you clarify what is meant by this word here? And point out the word to him, and he'll be able to give you a little explanation. Some people wait until the test is nearly over. They wait right until part two is nearly over, their 1 minute preparation time, and then they ask the question, and then the examiner can't really answer because your time is up. So yeah, if you don't know a particular word in part two, then just straight away throw it to the examiner, and they should be able to answer that for you or give you some kind of help, assistance. In which section, listening, reading, writing, or speaking, students make more mistakes? So that's a good question. I'll give you an example of one candidate that spoke to me from Aktabe. And this candidate had got a 9, if you would believe it. He was an NIS student. He got a 9 in listening, and he got a 9 in reading. However, for speaking and for writing, he got 6. So you can just imagine the difference there. Between the receptive skills of reading and listening and the output skills of writing and speaking. So yeah, if I'm not sure if it's about mistakes, it's about which skills you're best at. And I think for a lot of people in Kazakhstan, writing is actually one of the skills which they really struggle with. And that's because, again, in the school system in Kazakhstan, writing isn't really developed. What if my pronunciation is perfect, but my grammar lacks a little bit? It's very rare that somebody would have perfect pronunciation but pathetic grammar. Usually language is kind of absorbed across the 4 criteria. Obviously, there are instances when somebody is quite fluent, but with really horrible grammar. However, yeah, I don't think it would be generally on 99.9% of the tests. Most people have a fairly even mark across the 4 criteria. So they might get 7 for pronunciation and a 6 for grammar, but it'd be very rare that somebody would get 8 for pronunciation and then yeah, something much different for grammar or for pronunciation. Okay. Aknur was asking whether I'm sharing something. I'm not sharing anything. And there you go. I've taken off my blue screen, which was my background. I think the question and answers have been all answered. Let me just have a look at some of the questions here in the chat. In what ways can you improve your vocabulary? Again, vocabulary, there are a lot of excellent books out there that you can use to improve your vocabulary. I would definitely recommend getting a hold of some of them, going through them. There's Academic Vocabulary in Use, very good book for IELTS students. So that would definitely be something that could help. There's a series of books, Vocabulary in Use for General English. Remember, you do need a wide range of vocabulary. You need the academic vocabulary as well as some of the basic vocabulary. I'm sorry, I didn't realize people were writing questions in the chat. I was just reading the questions from the question and answer. But let's have a look at some of these. Is it normal if I will pronounce some of the words wrong during speaking? And again, I think people make a lot of mistakes. If we looked at our candidates today, they were very high-level candidates. The 2 girls, they weren't very high-level candidates, but they were high-level candidates. And yeah, they were making a lot of mistakes. And there is, a band 7 is going to be making mistakes. However, it's the type of mistakes that they're making which differentiates them from a band 4. Obviously, it's not these mistakes aren't impeding communication. So it's okay if you're pronouncing words wrong, that's fine. Not a problem at all. Oh, sorry, Alton, can you see any questions that I might have missed? Somebody's asking a question about listening. Should we write in capital letters? It's not necessary to write in capital letters. Just write what is legible. So if you feel that if your answers are more legible in capital letters, then write in capital letters. If you feel your answers are more legible in not in capital letters, and don't write with capital letters.
Okay, Adam, I think that we may finish because I cannot see some interesting questions, and we can answer all of these questions ourselves. If they can, for example, just text us, it's not a problem.
Okay, no problems. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And again, really happy to be able to spend a session with you. I wish you all the best. Have a good evening and a good sleep, and looking forward to finishing off our part part 3, speaking tomorrow, and getting into some writing task 1. So goodbye.